Kyrie Irving supposedly left the arena tonight in a wheelchair due to a right lower extremity foot ankle injury here after Dwight Powell unfortunately came down and landed on his foot. And in this video, we're going to take a look at what sounds like a kind of bizarre story. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and my goal on the channel is to help teach you about the medical side of the sports world. Let's dive right into this play here. So I think we have to be careful when we hear and kind of talk about people leaving in a wheelchair, because oftentimes a wheelchair is just the quickest form of transportation. I think what's more unusual is that Irving needed to leave the arena, because we heard the report while the game was still going on from the announcers that supposedly Irving had left the arena in a wheelchair. And I don't think we should focus as much on the in a wheelchair part as the fact that he supposedly needed to leave the arena, which would be a very unusual thing to need to do, even if there was a fracture in the foot or in the ankle. But looking at this play here, I think if we're talking about anything serious, it's probably going to be more of a bone type of injury. So as Dwight Powell comes down and lands here on Irving's right foot, of course, we're looking at the right foot, the right ankle. And when you think of mechanisms like this, usually when we talk about tendon ruptures, like the Achilles tendon, there's some sort of load or stretch put through that tendon. And in this case, even though we saw Irving actually grab a little bit on kind of the back portion of his ankle, there was no specific load or stretch on the Achilles tendon, so I would not be concerned necessarily about an Achilles tendon injury. Also, you can see really here how his leg and foot just almost kind of bounce off of the court. We see his knee drop down to absorb some of that impact, but what really happens is his tibia, his foot gets internally rotated. So as he comes down here, you can see his foot is now pointing inward. That's going to be internal rotation. And I think what probably took the brunt of the blow is either the lateral or the medial malleolus, the two bones in the outer portions and inner portion of the ankle, just from how Powell landed and just the direct pressure you would get on those two bony prominences. There's not really a significant amount of force that we can see applied through the foot. And usually when we're talking about major foot injuries like a Liz Frank tear or something like that, there's often some component of axial load. So when we talk about axial load, we mean that there is some force that's actually going through the foot as opposed to just somebody landing on the side of the foot. Now, in this position, certainly the metatarsal bones in the foot can be pushed together and can bruise or contuse sort of in those inner metatarsal phalangeal joints, those inner MTP joints, and cause more of like a bursitis type of phenomenon. But I'd be very surprised if this was leading to any significant ligamentous or real soft tissue injury, again, because there's just not a lot of force that's stabilizing those structures to allow all that excess load to get transferred into those key ligaments. Now, if we look at our biodigital anatomy tool here and talk about just some of these bony structures, what I said with the lateral and medial malleolus or malleolus. So lateral means outside and then medial means inside. So if we're looking straight on here at a right foot, this is going to be the lateral malleolus. You can feel this on yourself. You can push on that outer bump, and that's actually the lower portion of the fibula bone down on the ankle. It's where all your main ankle ligaments originate off of. On the inside, of course, medial means inside. So here we have the medial malleolus. That's the bump on the inside of your ankle, and that's going to be the distal or lowermost portion of the tibia or the shin bone. So here in this case, whenever Irving lands and then Powell comes down on top of him, his foot rotates inward, and then you get the floor pushing on the medial side of his ankle, you get Dwight Powell pushing on the lateral side of his ankle, basically just kind of squeezing it together. But the ankle joint itself is not loaded, so we're not really looking at things like a high ankle sprain. Again, there's no axial force going up through the foot here that would make me worried as much about like a Liz Frank injury. And so I think if there's something here, I'd be listing a bone injury number one, and then more of like a sprain number two. Again, the weird part about this is the fact that they said he'd left the arena. I presume that's to go to the hospital. Now, I don't know if that means that maybe the x-ray machine was not working that the Timberwolves have on site, because even if there is some sort of fracture here in his foot, that's not something that you would necessarily like have to go to the hospital for. Usually you're going to get the x-ray there, and then you're not going to have surgery right away unless it's a truly major like compound open fracture. And we saw Irving able to walk off the court. And there's these things we have called the Ottawa ankle rules that help us determine whether or not an x-ray is needed. And technically, the fact that Irving was able to bear weight immediately, he wouldn't even necessarily qualify to get an ankle x-ray or a foot x-ray. So it's a little bit bizarre. Again, don't focus so much on the wheelchair part, because they probably just wheeled him to wherever he was going to go quicker, and a wheelchair was the quicker way as opposed to having him limp and hobble on crutches. It sounds dramatic. The bigger question here should be, why did he need to leave the arena? Nothing about this seems overly traumatic. Again, the bones would be the two things that I'd be most worried about. Here, of course, what we talked about, that medial inner portion of the ankle malleolus rotating inward, pushing on the court. Dwight Powell landing on the top of his foot. And so that would be my number one concern. Stay tuned. We'll see if we get any more updates here. But again, just looking at this, nothing really jumps out as being a big major thing. Now, of course, we're not there examining them. This is just looking at the video. But I think we need to figure out first why he needed to leave the arena. Was it to go to the hospital? Was it just to go back to the hotel or something? What exactly else is going on here? But those are my initial thoughts from looking at this play. Let me know down below any questions or comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.